Hey everyone, Dr. Barengrutter here. The Just the other day there was a discussion about what do you do when you have a tooth like this attached to a model. So you brought in a virtual wax up tooth, and it does not impinge within the tissue. So like for instance, if I slide this down, that's pretty. It seems easier because it's already embedded in the model. So it seems like you could print that, but quite often that's not possible. And so there was discussion about some of the different ways that you can correct this. And so I'm not going to go into all those ways just because, well, those are covered in other videos. But here's how I would do this. Now, two things. First of all, if you were to bring in a tooth that's a ponic tooth instead, that's certainly going to make things easier because it's already a closed tooth. But honestly, not all the ponics are closed the way I want them to be. So instead, I'll show you I might come up with, think of another way to tell you how to do this, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, I'm going to hide this model, I'm going to come to Analysis, Inspector, and I'm going to close it off. Now, the thing that you have to be aware of is I don't want a flat finish, okay? Because this is going to be sort of weird shape. It will work to a degree, but it is not what I am looking for. Instead, I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that, go back to Analysis, Inspector, and I'm going to change this to Round or Smooth Fill. Now, click on it. So now we've created our own Pontic tooth. And I like the shape of it a little bit more. I mean, this one isn't bad if you're, for an actual Pontic, because it helps to kind of center in the tissue. But for this purpose, I want it nice and rounded here. So let's take a look at, here's the arch. Still obviously not in contact. So how are we going to get that down there? Now there's a couple different ways you can do this. You could come into the Select tool or press the S button and just double click right if I'm hovering, if I click once it just randomly selects. But it doesn't matter how big my selection is. If I double click, it only selects whatever color, whatever face group I'm on. By the way, my size is pretty large. I'm going to dial this down a little bit. It tends to make the computer run a little slower. Okay, so I can take this, I can turn my model, well, let's turn the model back on. I can click on that, and now I can hit the Transform button, modify or deform by just using the T button, and then slide this down. That's one way. That was one of the things that was sort of discussed. It's too vertical, too cylindrical, whatever. It's too straight. It's not very anatomic for me. You could instead press the Shift T button, which is a shift transform, which as you'll see, or let's go back to T. T, if I slide it down and slide it whichever way, it's very straight. Okay? If I hold Shift and T, which is also in the modified transform, soft transform, not shift, smooth transform, I can slide it and it sort of warps it a little bit along the edge. Okay? So if I move this here, it's not quite as abrupt, and I can modify the fall off. So I can click here, and you can see that it changes where the change is done, and so it creates this nice emergence right off the bat. Okay, so that to me is the first way to do it, and it's still sticking up a little bit right there. So there we go. So now we've got a slightly more rounded tooth, a little more ideal looking, I would say. And it's submerged within it, so if you have this model closed as well, you're going to be able to have a printable model. So that's the first way to do it, is just to Control Z, is to grab that whole area. The other way to do it, it's a little bit trickier here because this is visible. I'm going to hide this. I will actually come right in the middle of this, hit Select, and just click once. Okay. I'm going to smooth the boundary. It's kind of jagged. I just press the B button normally, but it's right down here. Smooth boundary. Creates a nice circle. Hit Accept. Now you see we've got another face group. I just hit Escape just to show you the difference in colors, kind of like an Easter egg. Turn this model on, and now I can double click this one. And so now Shift T gives me that same, it's because of the surface group. Control Z, that purple one. I'm going to double click this. I'm going to remove this for surface group, this purple one, and it's going to be Control Shift G, but clear face group. Okay. sorry, so now I'm going to double click on this and hit the Shift T. And so now I can change it and I start off smaller. Why is that important? Sometimes, in the last one I showed you, I'm doing the exact same thing I did before. The only difference is it allows me to start smaller. Okay? And so now I could say start right there, and now drag it down. So the only reason I bring that up is if that colored area that we had that was purple was too much and it was bringing the soft transform had to be so high that it wasn't good, it wasn't looking right, make your selection area smaller so it's not covering the entire bottom of the tooth. And you can see this is a nice gradual slope. Now, the other one may have been better in this circumstance. I don't, whatever. But anyway, two different options. One is just to, they both revolve around the process of first healing it or closing the tooth and then doing a soft transform of it to submerge it into the model. So anyway, hope that helps.